Welcome, everyone. This is Betska, the Guru Coach, together with my wonderful, famous co-host, Raj Vashisht. Welcome to Mindful Leadership Beyond Borders. And our guest today is Natalie Lynch. She is a
Hi there.
psychologist. Hi. Nat, let me introduce
Hair is
her.
so beautiful, Natalie here.
Natalie's hair. Yeah, it's wild and gorgeous. Natalie lives in France. She's from Britain originally, many moons ago. She is a psychologist and a vegan chef, and we wanted to have her on to. I'm so excited about this conversation, but let me tell you a little bit more about her. She's a plant-based chef and food educator, passionate about elevating vegan cuisine. She originally trained as a psychologist with a PhD. She transitioned to food after discovering her love for cooking in childhood. She built a reputation in France, which is really cool, for high-end, indulgent vegan food. So aren't you curious, folks, about what this woman cooks? Running a guest house and catering for large events. So if you want a nice vacation in France, that's where you want to go. She teaches in person and online, helping chefs and home cooks create satisfying restaurant quality plant-based dishes. Her approach blends food science, which is important to understand, flavor profiling. I'm excited to talk to Natalie about that. Anyway, she'll tell us. And creativity to make vegan food extraordinary without compromise. Now, that's quite the statement. So very exciting. There's another little piece I want to add into her introduction, is that she never set out to be a vegan chef. She was just driven by her love of food. And when she became vegan, she lost the joy of cooking and eating. Lost it because something was missing. And that's the essence of what we want to get out of this interview. What was missing? And as she says, she has cracked the code on what makes food truly satisfying. So we want to know what that code is so we can all make our food exciting. So welcome, Natalie. It's such a joy to have you here. So how did you go from being a psychologist in the UK to a vegan chef in rural France? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, it's quite a story, isn't it? I mean, I was always interested in cooking anyway, and in my youth, I used to work in restaurants, so there's already an interest there anyway. And in my 20s, I spent some time in Vancouver actually, and I was working in kitchens there. And Vancouver's back then, 20 years ago, very vegan friendly, and that kind of planted a seed. And I was determined to go back and start a food career when I went back to the UK, which didn't happen. I don't know how. I ended up getting sucked into academia, did a master's, did a PhD in health psychology, and then I, became a psychologist academic doing research, and that was my life, and it was all right, but I wasn't truly happy doing that. And so there was one sort of fateful day with my husband. We were on holiday in France, and we were cycling across France, and my bike broke spectacularly one day, and so we were stuck in this village, beautiful village, Saint-Antoine-en-Auberval. And that's how the story began, really. We originally arrived being very grouchy, moody with each other, but then we realized how beautiful this village was. And our lives weren't quite working for us back in the UK. And so we just said, why don't we try it? Why don't we try living here? And so that's how it all began. We didn't set out to do cooking at all. We were going to do cycling holidays, but as the money ran out, I sort of started to do what I do best. I started cooking to make money, and that started it. And I kind of thought, at the time we were vegetarian, and I had no idea that could work in rural France at all. But as I started selling food at local markets, suddenly all the vegans, vegetarians were coming out of the hills and coming down because suddenly there was someone who could feed them. And that sort of started it, really. And so we eventually, when we had our accommodation built, we would start to serve vegan food to our customers, and then catering for events. And then eventually people started asking me, well, will you show us how to cook? And so, that kind of was the transition. And, I'm quite a geek. I'm a huge geek. And so I think that's what drove it as well. And I think, you mentioned earlier, My food, I love food. I absolutely adore food. I adore eating food. I love going out to eat food. And suddenly I lost enjoyment because I was vegan, but I didn't know that the rules changed when it's vegan. You take the meat and the dairy out, but what is there left? All the flavor and the richness goes. And so, it wasn't just enough to follow recipes. I kind of had to know why. What was it that I was missing? And that started the journey. And so this whole years of geekery and researching started. And so then I eventually started teaching what I'd learned in my cooking classes as well, in terms of, which we'll talk about later, how to get those elements back into your cooking. So that's the journey. That's how I ended up from being a psychologist to being a vegan chef.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I was just looking at some statistics last night, and almost 10% of Canadians where I live are vegan or vegetarian, only 10%. And for some reason, I thought it would be much higher today, but it's not. The Canada Food Guide a few years ago came out and said we must stop eating, meat, as much meat as we do. We have to transition to a plant-based diet. So even the Canadian government is saying to people we need to do that, but it doesn't appear to be happening as quickly as it could. And the World Health Organization has published many studies to say, we need to stop eating red meat. And that was just primarily for the health. They weren't even talking about animal suffering or anything like that. So from what I've read, everything points to the fact that all humans should consider eating vegan for their own health, for the health of the planet, because we know that animal agriculture contributes greatly to global warming, and that we should be vegan to stop animal suffering. So from a psychological perspective, what do you think is going on in their heads? For what reason are people resisting the move to veganism?
I think it's a huge question. There's so many things going on. So I'll touch upon a few of them. I think, it's only 10%. So most people are still eating meat. And I think, those of us who have transitioned, most of us began eating meat. Obviously, some people aren't. But, we're socialized in a way, aren't we, where our meals revolve around that. And so that's kind of what we're used to. But then, all our family life is, often our family social life is based around food and that kind of thing. And we're just often bombarded with messages. And, as we know, people often say, well, if you eat a vegan diet, then where's the protein? And we've all heard that as vegans. We've all heard where's the protein. But if you're not vegan, then that becomes the major topic to stick to. Well, I can't get enough vegan. So there's this thing called cognitive dissonance, isn't there, where you only kind of you pay attention to the information that kind of conforms to what you believe, and also things that make you uncomfortable as well. You reject that, and so you sort of start to pin all these arguments on things. So I can't be vegan because there's no protein. And so that's one of the things that people pin to. And so there's that. And there's also, we are social eaters and people want to be accepted. And I think by saying I'm vegan, I think most people know it's the right thing to do, whether it's for, animal welfare, environment, health. Most people know it's the right thing to do, and yet they still don't do it. And so, it's a difficult thing, isn't it? And I think people are uncomfortable going out and saying they're vegan, even because by saying it, you're saying to everyone else, well, I've made the decision, I've become vegan, and then therefore you're judging them. It's not like I'm deliberately judging them, but people feel judged, and they should feel judged because they know it's the wrong thing to carry on eating that with all the evidence. They carry on doing it. So people do feel judged, and so they therefore they feel uncomfortable with that, and so they project all the anger onto the vegan. So the fact that they feel uncomfortable, they instead be angry with the vegan rather than feeling comfortable and think, well, perhaps I do need to change something, and change my way that I live, change my lifestyle, and live in a more compassionate way. So instead, the anger is to the vegan rather than to how they live. And so that's classic cognitive dissonance there. So, there's that going on as well. And I just think it's hard, people perhaps, and, from my perspective, I think the difficulty is that, I said earlier, I love food. And so it was a hard transition for me. because I knew it was the right thing and I stopped enjoying food. And I think that is one of the biggest barriers for people, because ultimately people want to enjoy what they eat. And if you believe by being a vegan, it might be the right thing to do, but you're going to lose all enjoyment for eating, it becomes really hard to transition, I think. I think that for me, that's where I see my role is, if that really is the barrier, then I can help with that. And so it's about, and so I think I mentioned earlier, it's about that kind of that gentle activism, just planting that seed that vegan food can be nice. And so that is what I believe is just breaking down that barrier and preconception that vegans don't eat rabbit food. They can eat things that are as indulgent and as enjoyable as an omnivore diet.
Yeah. And maybe because people are there, in terms of they've always eaten meat, so they'll continue to eat meat and dairy. And if they only knew how delicious vegan food was, they might go, oh, I was telling you off camera about my friends. We were looking after their dog while they went away for a month, and they knew we have a vegan household, and their dog was going vegan anyway. So they turned their dog vegan, and now they are moving more towards a plant-based diet because of their dog, or so it appears, So it's kind of cute, like people, they need to be helped.
Yeah, I think so. I think another story I can tell you about that is, when we were first here, we had this vegan family from Paris, who wanted us to cook for them. And they wanted the other family who lived around here to come as well. And their family are all cow farmers. And so this Parisian family were very nervous because their whole vegan lifestyle was being judged, and they wanted their farming family to enjoy the food. And so I didn't know at the time, all these farmers had come and they bought loads of food with them in their pockets and bags hidden away, because they believed they were going to eat my food and still be hungry. That was the preconception that they had. And so, they ate the food, and to their shock and annoyance, they loved it. And they weren't full either. And they really enjoyed it. And every year they come back together. So these traditional farmers love my food, and they've come back for cooking classes. They're still not brave enough to be honest about it. So with their other French farming neighbours, they're very much in the closet. They don't admit to it, but they do now eat more vegan food as well. So I just think, do you know what I mean? It is about removing that barrier, I think.
You
can enjoy it.
So, you basically answered my next question is, what else can you do for gentle activism? I'm thinking for me, I could use some advice too. How do you inspire people to love plant-based food without preaching to them, without making them feel guilty, for example, or shaming them? I mean, we never want to do that, but we know the research is very clear that it is the healthiest diet. So anything else you can do? Anything else we can do to help inspire it?
I personally believe in, like I say, not being preachy about it, because I think as soon as you start trying to promote it, it's that joke, how do you know someone's a vegan? Oh, they're going to tell you about it. But, and that's supposed to be really funny. But the thing is, most vegans I know actually aren't preachy. They don't talk about it. They just quietly get on with it. And so I think there's no point pressuring someone. And I just think, we just need to be as open as possible. And we need to try and not make people feel judged. And we need to be very gentle about it. But, because part of a lifestyle is we want to be compassionate. And I think we need to be compassionate to those people who aren't quite there yet. And I always say to people, I'm not trying to convince anyone to become vegan either, because from being omnivore to vegan is such a big step. And I think you need to make little steps. And so I think if you can just gently push someone. So for me, it is about the food. It is about making it enjoyable. And I think it's about teaching people, how you can make it satisfying so they're not feeling hungry afterwards. It's about breaking down those barriers. People seem to think as vegans, we just eat salads. We eat vegetables in different ways. It's like, well, no, actually, yes, we eat lots of vegetables, but it's much more exciting than that. And so it's about showcasing the food. And so, obviously I make food for people, but I also teach people. And, I want to just teach, I want people to feel proud of their cooking as well. So it's about giving them the knowledge and the skills as to how, not just to replicate a recipe, but knowing how to make something taste truly great, how to get all that flavor in there, that kind of thing. So for me, the gentle activism is just breaking that barrier down and just saying vegan food is nice. It can be indulgent as anything else as well. So
in our village last year, we had a celebration. We have a pond garden sanctuary that we revitalized. It's a beautiful place. People go and rest and meditate there. It's a piece of heaven, actually, but it had become run down, and so we rejuvenated it. So I thought, let's have a party. Let's have a party to celebrate. So we invited everyone to bring whatever food they wanted to bring, but we separated it. We had the vegan barbecue separate from the meat barbecue. And then we had tables, and I'd labeled, these are meat dishes, these are vegan dishes, and also gluten-free dishes, right? And people appreciated that. And so I saw, people going to the gluten-free and vegan foods to, they were curious, to try them out. So that is gentle activism as well, just helping people to understand the difference and making foods that really taste great,
I think so. And I always like to say, I never want someone to say to me, oh, that's really nice for vegan food. What I want them to say is, oh, that's really nice food.
Yes.
And to me,
Yes,
if someone can just say, oh, that's really nice food and not mention the vegan thing, then I've won. And I think hopefully, we've broken down that barrier. And as you say with the party, if people are just looking at the vegan food thinking, that looks nice, and they're eating it and they're enjoying it, then you've done your thing. You've helped to bring that bit closer to actually, accepting that food into their lives.
Yeah, exactly. Our village has, it's a town, I guess, less than 10,000 people. And you may know Pamela Anderson. She's very famous. She lives in our town.
Oh, cool.
Excuse me. Has a beautiful house on the water. And anyway, we feel very blessed, even though we have so few residents. We have a vegan restaurant.
Oh, wow.
I know. And so we try and support it as much as we can. And my husband and I love Chinese food. So we, go to a Chinese restaurant, and over the years, I've been asking them, well, what can you make for us that's vegan and really delicious? And, you know what she did, Natalie, this wonderful restaurant owner? Because every time I'd call, I'd say, we don't want any meat juice in our food. Can you please separate it? The woman went out and bought us a separate wok.
Oh, that's so adorable. That's lovely.
I'm so grateful to this woman. We know each other by name now because we're calling it. And then I'd say, well, what else can you make for us that's inspiring? Because you get sick and tired of the same food, right? And so the last piece she developed was yam noodles, making a Chinese dish from yam noodles. Oh my God,
nice.
It's so delicious. Talk about umami. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So anyway, I feel blessed that we have this in our little community, and she's helping us. She appreciates our business because we're there a lot, and I feel that our food is coming to our table or to our home clean. And I don't have to worry about any meat juice. So, well, listen, Natalie and Raj, we're going to take a pause, and we'll be back for part 2. But folks, stay with us because Natalie's going to talk about how to add excitement to your vegan food. Umami, as we say in another language. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.